All right, pleasant good morning to everyone in the Caribbean region. A pleasant good afternoon or good night to those of us who are out of the region and different time zones. Welcome back to the second day of the Caribbean AgTech Investment Summit 2021. We had a very good day yesterday with our opening remarks, followed by our two panels this morning. I know I certainly learned a lot regarding investment in Israel, as done by our presenter, Miss Danielle Abraham. We also learned a lot about why the Caribbean is right for agri-tech investments from Dr. Raju Hussain. And we also learned from CEO of Marquis Farm, Plants Grow and Eat, Mr. Peter Dillon, which I thought was highly informative. We then went into the country-specific presentations yesterday afternoon. I hope many of you were able to stay for those, where Jamaica and Turks and Caicos Islands were able to present investment opportunities. So we have another packed agenda for today. We have one session this morning entitled "The Review of Investment Opportunities in Key Market Segments." That will be moderated by Mr. Vassal Stewart. And this afternoon, we have country presentations from Belize, which will be chaired by Dr. Leroy Almendares, who is the Executive Director of Beltrade, which is the investment trade promotion agency for Belize. Followed by that, we will go into country presentations for Suriname, and we have with us the Honorable Albert Ramdin, and then we will go on to country presentations for St. Vincent and Grenadines, where we will have the Honorable Saboto Caesar. So again, we have a very packed presentation, so I will jump right into it. I would like to introduce Mr. Vassal Stewart, who will chair our first session this morning, entitled "A Review of Investment Opportunities in Key Market Segments." Vassal, over to you.
Thank you very much, Danny. Trying to get my mic. And let me also welcoming our participants. I'm seeing that at this point we have 114 and growing. Another very warm welcome. I don't know if wherever you are, if you are in the Caribbean, we're having a very beautiful day here in Trinidad. It's hot, it's warm, so maybe during this process I'll have to dish my jacket, given how hot it is today. What we're going to do today is give you far more detailed information on the opportunities in the region compared to the broader issues that were discussed yesterday. Yesterday, we sought to ensure that you had a good understanding of the reasons that you should invest in the Caribbean in general. Today, what we want to do is to talk to you about the opportunities that exist in specific industries, specific market niches. And we happen to have a very strong panel comprising persons who have worked in all the relevant industries, some of whom have not only worked in the industry from a development perspective, but are also investors themselves. So you'll have a rich range of speakers. The issues that they will bring to your attention, I think, will provide you with a good understanding of the specific opportunities in the various industries. We'll be covering root crops, in fact, and other staples. We'll be looking at the opportunities in the fruit and vegetable industry, particularly as it relates to the tremendous opportunity for agro-processing. The honey industry is another major growth area, not only in the Caribbean, but from an export perspective. As you are all aware, everyone who recognizes the need to avoid NCDs will know that sugar is a product that you ought to be avoiding. And perhaps the best alternative to that is honey, which means that this is a major growing market. We'll look at our fish industry, our meat industry, and finally the medicinal and herbal industry in the Caribbean. I want to start this morning with the root crop industry. We have with us Maran Extavor, V, as she's popularly known, move on shaker in the Caribbean industry. She is in fact technical officer with FAO. She has substantial experience in working in root crop development. In fact, from farm to table, she has worked in the area of nutrition. She's in fact a nutritionist. She has worked in a major food processing facility in Trinidad as a development technician initially, and moving through the ranks to become the agro-processing manager of this major agro-processing plant. She's now providing tremendous services through FAO in developing the root crop industry in the Caribbean, providing technical advice, financing from FAO for R&D, for product development. They have also supporting R&D at the primary level in terms of developing new technologies to increase productivity. And at the end of the chain, they're also promoting greater consumption of Caribbean staples by providing consumers with new ways of utilizing various types of root crops and other types of tree staples, bananas, plantains, and breadfruit. So she will be able to bring to you a better understanding of our staples industry and where the opportunities exist for growth. So over to you, V.
Hi, good morning, Caribbean and the world at large, and thank you, Vassal and the team for inviting me to present this morning and to share with you some of the opportunities that exist in the root crop industry within the Caribbean, and the opportunities we have for investment at your well-established summit over these next couple of days. It is my pleasure to be here. I have been in the sector for some time, and I do, as Vassal endorsed, contributed in various ways along the chain, and hope today to share some of my knowledge and also to hear from you and your thoughts as well. So as I jump straight into it, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you're seeing it. And
yes, we are. Just need to get into the other mode.
Good. All right. So primarily, what are we talking about when we speak about roots and tubers? And we're not root. I deliberately named it root crops because our starchy crops are primarily what we're talking about, and focus on the development opportunities and investment in not just cassava, where we kickstarted the work in the region and with cassava, just looking at some of the other traditional crops that we do produce in the Caribbean and the opportunities for growth and expansion. So it would include sweet potato, plantain, breadfruit, dasheen, yams, just to name a few of the crops covered in here and not limited to. But certainly these are the ones that have certainly championed some of the growth over the last 5 to 10 years. To just quickly just give you a snapshot of what we do within the region. So we generally import quite a bit of cereals, and cereals here defined as, well, based on the global trade statistics from the CARICOM trade data, speaking to the imports of wheat, sorghum, maize, corn. The light blue line shows our imports of these items, and the blue line shows our exports from extra-regional and also within the region, where we have some trade highlighting the size of the market that's in and around $250 million US in trade reflected from extra-regional sources that occurs. We also just take a snapshot of where our roots and tubers are somewhat captured and what the market looks like, seeing the potential growth we have in our roots and tubers that has begun to increase over the last 6 years, and within the region that we have also been increasing the movement of edible vegetables, and some of our roots and tubers are increasing over the years, highlighting the stimulus that has been provided by government and private sector and public sector to begin to grow and develop the industry. So one of the things we want to talk about is, what does it really bring? What are those real opportunities so far? And I'm going to just take a little time here to share with you what the opportunities generally look like in these areas. We have had a lot of development taking place, given the support that we have received both at the level of the government and the level of the private sector. So these are some of the more common products that have now made it mainstream onto our market shelves within the Caribbean, and following the stimulation and investment in various ways. The snack chip industry has certainly grown and has significantly increased, providing the potential for us to use our roots and tubers to meet and to replace some of those imports. Dashing chips, plantain chips, sweet potato chips, as snack chips are well popular on a number of the shelves in the Caribbean, from Barbados to Trinidad, and our OECS countries as traditional crops that are now packaged and made for sale, as an opportunity to grow. Our smallholders have also undertaken several investments to begin to package these items and make it available, not just to the locals, but also to the tourism market and the tourists who visit our islands and purchase products such as at the airports and at our point of entry, such as the ports. We also have growing development and well-stated notice of our pasta. Root crop pasta has been seen on our shelves, as well as has made it into the international market. Currently, we have sweet potato and cassava pasta being traded via Amazon from one of our local suppliers coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. And we also have work coming out of Jamaica. Jamaica has also been a leader in the snack chip production and export market in the region, providing cassava and other root crop chips for trade from Jamaica producers. Also, we have smallholders in countries such as Grenada and St. Lucia producing root crop pasta and making for sale in local markets. We've also seen an increase in composite flowers and root crop flowers being produced in the Caribbean, targeting niche markets and persons looking for the opportunity to provide a gluten-free alternative, both to locals and tourists alike, and really finding close linkages with the export sector and the tourism sector for such quality products.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think we're seeing the wrong screen because we're not seeing your presentation anymore. So I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, what are you seeing? Because on my screen, I have the slide with the packagings, the different packages.
We're seeing a Word document.
No, Dave,
right
we're seeing the Word document. I thought it was relevant anyhow because it explained.
I wasn't sure either, but I was like, I'm just gonna mention it just in case.
Wow.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to share again. My apologies, because I was sharing screen too. I don't know how it jumped. Tell me what you're seeing now.
Right, now we're back. We're back
now
to where
we're good.
you want to be. Yes, excellent.
My apologies. So I was speaking to the snack chips, and my notes for what I was reading off of.
Just show your versatility.
Of the opportunities, pasta that I was referring to, that we have from processors, and a big processor out of Trinidad and Tobago who has successfully invested and had the pasta being traded on Amazon at present, and taking orders from an international market. The composite flour is a growing area that support is available, and product being produced. And in this area, we have sweet potato, dashi, cassava, breadfruit flours being made. The bakery sector is also leaning itself towards investing and looking for the opportunities to use root crop flours and as partial replacements in their own flour. And there's initial indications from Trinidad and Tobago. There were initial investments and research pursued out of Jamaica, and a number of the bakeries have also taken on to looking at the opportunity to using flour and also other products from root crops. Here in Barbados, the largest bakery has begun pursuing research and testing on the market, not just cassava flour, but they're also using sweet potato and breadfruit. They've also partnered with our entertainment industry to promote products that contain local traditional crops such as cassava and sweet potato. We have a growing desire. We import a lot of white potato fries, and sweet potato fries is widely imported, but we have a number of players in countries identifying the opportunities for them to produce using local sweet potato, to produce sweet potato fries as a high carbohydrate, a complex carbohydrate alternative. Frozen root crop chunks, widely interested, a product that has seen market growth from persons with our dual earner families, and the increase in working hours for some persons and the demands at the home. We're having cassava and root crops pre-prepped and frozen allows families and the households to prepare dishes easier, and also lends itself to the restaurant and tourism sector for easier utilization and offering of traditional crops in an easy to use form in their preparations. Grated cassava, interestingly, while we began the work in the Caribbean out of Trinidad, utilizing grated cassava to begin the replacement of imported wheat flour, has certainly seen growth and expansion in different ways throughout the region. In Suriname, for example, it is used to make cassava fries. The actual grated mash by the hotels are used to make cassava fries and cassava pancakes on their menus. We also have, and I've also noted as far as Vietnam and across the world, where grated cassava is now being produced for use in dishes. So I think it's a great product that is very versatile and has shown market potential and growth. And last, and by no means least, the utilization of cassava to replace the use of malt in beer making, the successes of Red Stripe in Jamaica, and having the exploration and interest of the beer companies in Trinidad and Tobago, in Suriname, and other couple of the islands interested in exploring the opportunities to produce roots and tubers towards this utilization as a potential. One of the things I can say with us in the Caribbean, it is not about our size, but it is about us working together to make these markets become more developed, established, and viable for smallholders and large farmers alike. The range and opportunities of products that we have available to us are varied, and I've only touched and scratched the surface of where the potential of developing the roots and tubers industry and the root crop industry can go. We have large market potential, and we need to come together to do that with partnerships to drive the investment. Some of the work that has been done and some of the benefits for us doing that allows us to diversify our markets. It allows us to promote traditional crops and retain our heritage linked through these traditional commodities. It allows us to promote the consumption of complex carbohydrates linked to healthier eating choices. We also have the opportunity to contribute to the reduction of the non-communicable diseases, which is so rampant amongst our islands, and so much more. The research is producing more and more information to show us that diversifying and developing our roots and tubers and root crops industry is well in place for the Caribbean, and helps and would also work along the entire value chain for us to build our own food and nutrition security in the region. So what are some of these investment opportunities that we can speak to? So taking a value chain approach, market-driven, holistic approach, given the investment to date, both by government and private sector, we have the opportunities to improve production and productivity, and I should put production and productivity on farm and at the processing level. Work has been done and validated on the introduction of new varieties and the methods to preserve and to introduce new planting material for varieties that are higher yielding and can lend themselves to improved production. Our productivity practices by the use of new approaches to manage farms using farmer field schools and participatory approaches have been proven to improve our ability to improve not just production, but the productivity of roots and tubers. In agro-processing, we have begun to start the investments done to produce pasta, flour, have resulted in products and new products being available in the market that are now commercially available in various forms across the region. The opportunity to introduce and to continue to expand the use of technology, the introduction of different types of technology, both digital and non-digital technology. We have the utilization of on-farm planters and harvesters for roots and tubers of varying sizes, both for small and large island states. The opportunity to introduce technology in terms of drones and mapping and using digital technologies to lend themselves to climate change adaptation and monitoring that can be applied and definitely relevant for the opportunities in the root crop sector, as well as in processing. The opportunity for us to improve traceability systems using digital technologies to meet market requirements, become the opportunity for us to expand and to grow and to meet those export requirements, as well also the opportunity for us to meet our own interregional trade requirements by introducing improved technologies along the value chain. Critical, very important, is stimulating the investment with public and private sector partnerships, as well as standalone, not just financial investments for startups, but the investment by partnering together to grow the root crop industry in partnership where private sector who understands markets, who lead markets, can get the support from government and others and other holders to engage and to grow the industry together. Several market-driven opportunities present themselves from the production level to processing and marketing for roots and tubers, and lend itself for direct investment at various stages, depending on where you have an interest. With that, I want to just say thank you, and I hope I gave you quite enough information to feed off of and to think about in the short time allocated for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vermeran. I think you have done exactly what you've just said, provide a quick but very comprehensive synopsis of the tremendous potential that exists in the root and tubers and in fact the broader staples industry. And what I'd like our potential investors and our participants to take away from your presentation is the fact that this is an industry that is growing. In terms of understanding the potential, you just need to look at the fact that wheat, rice, corn, and white potato collectively, in terms of regional imports, is over $1 billion US. And our root crops, particularly cassava, can replace much of what we produce from wheat. In fact, any product that we produce from wheat, except for loaves where you need the gluten to cause your bakery products to rise, you can produce with cassava. So cassava has the potential to replace much of the products that we make from wheat. It can replace the products which is largely feed in the Caribbean, and to a lesser extent, it's also used for some of our cereals or breakfast cereals in particular. Cassava can replace that. You look at the potential for a displacement of imported fries, white potato fries. All our root crops, cassava, sweet potato, dasheen, and plantain as well, are potential replacement. And these will give you our industry's greater diversity, both in terms of product offering, particularly as it relates to our tourism industry. The fact that there are a number of new investors, I could speak for a number of investors in Trinidad who are now investing in the production of gluten-free flour. There are at least 4 investors in Trinidad and Tobago, 2 of which has public-private partnerships, another 2 that are purely private investment. And in the case of the private sector partners, I know they're all looking for partners. The other thing that I would like you to take away is the fact that these are going to be gluten-free products. And you may be aware that the gluten-free market is growing globally. Tremendous potential for export of a whole range of gluten-free products, particularly in the bakery industry. She also mentioned the opportunities that exist in the beverage industry. We are already using cassava starch for the production of beer in Jamaica. There are other companies that she has mentioned throughout the CARICOM that are now looking at that. So there are those tremendous opportunities, and we haven't dealt very much even with the snack industry. So in terms of the root and tubers and the staples in general, this is an area that offers investors tremendous opportunity, both in terms of market size, return on investment. We just did an exercise where the return on the investment for producing gluten-free bakery products was 73%. And that is before we look at some of the new technologies that we can introduce to increase productivity and the use of these smart technologies that will allow us to not only increase productivity, but to increase the safety of the value chain. So tremendous opportunity. I want to thank Vermaran, and she'll stay with us in case there are questions that you may have. The way we're going to manage this session, we'll allow the speakers to speak. You may note your questions and we'll take them after after the speakers have completed, all 5. We ought to move next to Mr. Rajiv Dipti. Unfortunately, Rajiv is tied up in a current discussion with the Ministry of Finance here. Monday was budget day in Trinidad, and there are a number of public-private sector meeting that follows from that. And Rajiv is a very important person in the food sector. Unfortunately, this morning he indicated that he may be late for this session, and if he, in fact, is unable to make it, then I will deputize. So I want to move on then to Mr. Aubrey Roberts on the area of. Now, Aubrey is an experienced honey entrepreneur. He was the former president of the Caribbean Beekeepers Association. He's a producer of honey, and in fact, of a range of products that are derived from the bee industry. He's an entrepreneur that not only produce, in fact, grow, produce from his own apiaries, but he bottles, he retails, so that he knows the market from the point of view of primary production through processing, through marketing. So he knows the entire value chain. In addition, through his role as a past president of the Caribbean Beekeepers Association, he has knowledge of what is happening throughout the region, and as it relates to the Caribbean capacity to be a producer for the export of honey. The Caribbean is well known for the quality of its honey. We have in fact won a number of international honey competition. I think Jamaica has won the competition, Guyana has won the competition, and so has Grenada. So it points to not only our ability to produce, but the fact that we are world-class quality producers. I'll ask Aubrey to take over from here and give us his impressions as to where the opportunities are in this growing international industry. Over to you, Aubrey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm very happy to be a part of this summit. I believe that agriculture is one of the areas for tremendous growth and for the creation of wealth, and also for securing our region. There is absolutely no reason why we eat so much of what we do not produce, right? And it's just a matter of us getting ourselves organized, and I believe that forums such as these allow us to dream and allow us to think and allow us to collaborate in this regard. In terms of honey, the region has been engaged in the production of honey from time immemorial. And there is every island, in every island there is some level of beekeeping going on, right? We often hear of the forerunners in Jamaica, in Grenada, in St. Lucia, in Trinidad, and even Guyana and Suriname. But I could tell you that as you travel throughout the region, there are beekeepers there working at every level. And beekeeping is very important because it is a subsector of agriculture that supports the other crops, right? So if you're talking about fruit production, 1 in every 4 fruits has to be pollinated, you know? And so beekeeping is a very important subsector of agriculture, and is important to helping producers to produce better and to have better efficiency in their production systems. The honey industry in the region is still pretty much primary, in that the focus is on honey and wax predominantly, right? Some islands are producing pollen, and that's about it, right? There have been experiments in terms of the production of venom. I know in St. Lucia, Richard Matthias has been experimenting with producing venom, extracting venom from his bees. And venom is a very high-end product that is used for medicinal purposes. I believe they use it in eye drops, the production of eye drops for certain types of eye ailments, right? But there are other products that can be produced from this beekeeping subsector, such as propolis. I know in Cuba, they do quite a bit of research and quite a bit of value-added products made of propolis. Propolis is a resin that the bees collect from trees, and they use it to control infections within the hive. It's actually an antibiotic. And it's also used in some types of cosmetics as well. So propolis is another area for growth, and important also to the subsector. I should mention though that not only are the products of the bees important, but the bees of themselves are important, because you may have heard that in some parts of the world they're losing millions and millions of colonies, right? And these colonies are lost, and it impacts their production. So the region, given our climate, our climatic conditions, being, we have summer all year, there are opportunities for us to produce queens and produce bees for export. So I would like to say that those are the primary products, but there's some other products still. There's royal jelly, which is a substance that the bees produce for feeding queens. That substance is used by sports persons as well as the elderly as a protein supplement. So there are many products that can be produced once from the beekeeping operations. And these products, of course, can be value added. I would not venture to list all of the things that can be done with honey. It's probably in the hundreds, right, of the various spin-off industries that could be catalyzed from beekeeping. But in a general sense, food, beverage, medicine, or the medicinal sector, cosmetics, beauty services, and tourism are the areas that beekeeping and beekeeping operations and AP products feeds into. I'd like to say the industry is still relatively simple. Simple in that it can be started by persons that do not have a lot of land, or do not have a lot of equipment, or do not have a lot of capital, right? Because it's one of the areas where you can start at a very small level, at a hobby level. 2 years ago, I started as a hobbyist while I was a student at school, and I never stopped, right? I never stopped. Apart from the actual products, there are services. So there are services in terms of removal services, because in the Caribbean, bees sometimes move into people's homes, move into people's farms, move into tombs sometimes. And beekeepers are from time to time called in to provide services of bee removal. There's also lots of opportunities in tourism, because the region has a legacy of tourism. I know, for instance, in Grenada, Dr. Jessamy has visitors from the cruise ships that would visit her honey farm, and they would come and spend a few hours. They can buy honey and they can see some of the flowers, and she can tell them about the medicinal plants in her garden. And that in itself is a niche product that can be offered to tourists. And this service, I believe, is not peculiar to Grenada. Anywhere else where cruise ships are berthing or visiting can have a similar operation, because as you move through the region, there will be different ways people do things, and there will be different levels of operation.
I have another 2
The
minutes.
tourists up there who are looking for that adventure that allows them to see something that they have never seen before, right? I know my friends in Tobago have been doing even what they call a bee safari, where they bring down beekeepers and environmental enthusiasts, and they can have a look at beekeeping and spend time working with beekeepers and so on. To sum up my presentation, I would want to give some of the challenges that need to be overcome in order for investments to prosper and to grow. And these challenges are, of course, access to capital, because many beekeepers do not own the land that is needed for the beekeeping operation. So relationships with orchard holders, relationship with foresters, relationship with governments is crucial to making these resources available. Climate change issues such as increasing risk of flooding in coastal areas and regions, forest fires, and more recently volcanic activity in St. Vincent has created environmental challenges to beekeeping. Access to rural transportation is often a challenge. Establishment of zones for beekeeping activities, I think this is key so that the industry can grow. Support at the community level and in schools to introduce youth to beekeeping as a career. And beekeeping is one of those careers that can be done with other careers. I, for instance, started my beekeeping, like I said, 2 or 3 years ago. But during that time, I also pursued engineering and management and family and other businesses. So it's the kind of business that can be done along with your other activities. You don't have to be exclusively a beekeeper. I do, however, intend to one day become a full-time beekeeper.
Excellent.
And market support at the country level to keep fake products off of the shelves, I think, is key, from food safety agencies and at ports of entry. Because you see, the fake product casts a bad light on the entire industry. Just imagine if people were allowed to put fake beer in the market. So you think you're buying a Banks beer, but it's actually a bottle of water. That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work. And similarly for products like honey and pollen and waxes and products made of honey, people must have the confidence that you're getting a genuine product.
And that's a great point to wrap up on Aubrey.
Yes. So I'll stop here and allow for questions, and I'm willing to answer questions as they come later on in the segment. Thank you very much.
Don't mention thanks a million for that very comprehensive review of the potential in the honey industry in the region. I myself though I had some knowledge of the industry, wasn't aware of the wide range of product. Indeed, from what you have outlined, I think this is an area that we have quite neglected in the Caribbean. And I do know that because, in the case of Guyana in particular, of a large forest reserve that's available, and the fact that the quality of the honey depends so much on the type of source of the pollen that the honey feeds on.
The forage and the nectar.
Right.
Yeah.
Does impact on the quality. And I think much of the fact that we have over the years been quite successful in exporting our honey, and in fact, in terms of the global recognition of the quality, is because of the type of plant species. And you mentioned some areas that you see as challenges, but indeed, these are also investment opportunities. So that when you look at what is possible, not only in terms of the product you mentioned, the issue of producing bee for export. And I read very recently that in the case of the US, that their bee industry has been decimated through monocropping and the use of chemicals. So I think it points to the potential along the entire value chain for investment, and the fact that the Caribbean is already recognized as a quality producer. The other area which I think has not been looked at enough is the fact that as we seek to reduce the use of sugar, especially in the soft drink and the bakery industry, the demand for honey becomes even greater, and the potential can be seen in a much wider context. So I think there are tremendous opportunities for us to pursue where that is concerned. So I'd like you to take a note of these potential areas. If you do have questions, just to hold them for the time being, and we'll come back to the subject and to questions for all. And I want to move on to fish industry. And in this case, we'll be asking Kent Vera to speak on this particular matter. Fishing industry in the Caribbean, as you know, we are surrounded by water, by sea, and therefore fishing is a traditional part of our economic and social activities. However, over the last, say 15, 20 years, we have faced some challenges because of overfishing. That has led to increased interest in aquaculture production, in mariculture. And again, because of the wide areas in each country in terms of potential for mariculture production. There are a wide range of coves and inlets that will allow us to produce a range of marine products, both plant and animal. So the potential in the region is quite exciting, not only in terms of traditional fishing, but in terms of mariculture, in terms of aquaculture, in terms of aquaponics. So Kent has tremendous experience as an agriculturalist. He's a trained agriculturalist. He went to the University of the West Indies, where he got his degree from a theoretical perspective. He then went on to the University of Guyana for practical training, hands-on farming experience. He's also one of those unusual agriculturalists who not only look at the economic aspect, but is highly tied to the whole issue of sustainability. So he's what you would describe as a climate sensitive farmer. And a lot of what he has been doing in his own business is to look at the link between profitability and sustainability. He's now one of the major, if not the major, producer of So what Kent will bring to the table is not only his own experience as an entrepreneur in the industry, but an understanding of the potential for growth. So I'll ask him to now make his presentation.
Good morning, all. The question this morning is why aquaculture in the Caribbean? Okay, I'm able to change here now.
Great. We're following you.
Okay, so aquaculture represents the buzzword, the blue economy. And in the Caribbean, it's particularly exciting because we are fish-eating people due to being islanders. We have tourism opportunities where we have culinary experiences, and in particular, fish being prepared in tamarind sauce is a personal favorite of mine. We have a more health-conscious population as well, and the omega-3, omega-6 ratios, and the protein content being higher than conventional meat, well, beef and chicken and stuff like that. So fish offers an opportunity there. We have an interesting aspect in terms of our sportsmen and women on the world stage, where where muscle recovery and the use of high proteins, and so fish could play a significant role in that regard. And also why the Caribbean is because we have also a logistic advantage to the hemisphere. We're basically in the middle, and we're able to go north, south, and west quite easily in that regard. The Caribbean opportunity, we have always had an imbalance. We've always imported more fish than we've been able to export. It was increasing, if you look at the years 2017, 2018, 2019, possibly COVID-19 is the cause of 2020 decrease, but still significant, and these are dollar values, and this is still very significant in terms of the amount of fish that comes into the Caribbean in that regard. So we have techniques. We have tank, pond, mariculture, and aquaponics. In the case of the tank opportunity, you would see this is a cage type system, that picture, where we use cages in the pond. Mariculture will also use the same cage concept. This is, for me, the top climate smart opportunity, because you're not draining water, you're not moving water at all. You're basically just putting the fish into these cages, feeding them, growing them, and eventually harvesting them from that. So it improves in terms of your whole management process. So between both the pond culture of cages and the mariculture cage culture, I think that is really very much geared towards a smarter, better climate change type environment. In terms of the species, well, tilapia, the pangasius, more popularly referred to as either the swai or the bassa. Now, I myself have been looking at some Amazonia species. The pacu and the Goliath catfish are two Amazonia species. The Goliath catfish is very similar to the pangasius in terms of its appeal, in terms of its texture, even in terms of the size of the fish and stuff like that. It's very comparable. The pacu is an opportunity. The pacu is the picture, the guy holding the fish in the picture, that is the pacu. They tend to have a more bloody meat, ideal for value-added sausages, burgers, meatballs. We also have had some guys recently doing a proof of concept for the red snapper and the grouper as a mariculture opportunity, and they're hopeful that they would get the support for the financial trying of the process. Other opportunities involve feed. The beautiful presentation that we got earlier on about the cassava. Cassava, in fact, is highly digestible in monogastrics in particular, it's digested in the stomach and not even in the small intestine. So when you're talking about feed conversion ratios and stuff like that, the cassava has a significant role to play in terms of feed production. In the past, it was not looked at because of costs and stuff like that, but I imagine if the technology is done that we could mechanize some aspects of the cassava production, we could bring cassava as a significant part of our feed and feed production. Fingerlings and nurseries, some of these new species, the pacu, the Goliath catfish, and even in terms of the mariculture with the redfish and the grouper, nurseries and setting up of hatcheries and that kind of thing is going to be a significant opportunity if those opportunities are to come to the fore. Packaging and branding. Many years ago, McDonald's decided to use Angus beef as their meat in making their burgers, and they did a huge marketing thrust behind Angus beef, and today everybody prefer Angus beef burgers and stuff like that. So I imagine that, you know, if we could do some potential or purposeful marketing along some of these species that were previously mentioned, we could create a real opportunity. That picture is a new form of packaging that we're hopeful to bring to the Caribbean soon. That fish is actually packaged on that tray. AI in artificial intelligence, we've been looking at that as an opportunity. We have actually been speaking to some guys out of Canada, where we're going to be using different sensors to check pH, nitrates, ammonia, oxygen, temperature, and they have some algorithms that takes these information and could actually advise you as per the health of the fish or the health of your water in that sense. It could tell you, you know, if you're feeding too much, if you should feed more, if you should feed less. Those kind of real-time data. So artificial intelligence certainly has an opportunity going forward. Enterprise software, well, that is from the management side of it in terms of being able to keep your records, maintain your records, compare your records. You also have like the whole issue of traceability as it pertains to the taking the fish from the farm to the table and stuff like that. All of those things are quite easily monitored and recorded with an enterprise software. And lastly, we look at solar and wind power, where solar and wind will reduce the cost of the operation. In aquaculture, you tend to have the need to run aerators, even refrigeration and stuff like that. And these opportunities tend to help reduce or help you manage those costs in that regard. And so there's significant work or significant opportunities in that regard. That kind of brings us to the end of what we wish to discuss. And so any further questions thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kent. That was an excellent presentation that provided us with a much needed understanding of the scope of the industry in the region. I want to focus on the points you've raised as it relates to the investment along the chain, because much as we have been seeking to develop this industry over the years, we have not been able to provide the investment in the early stage of the industry in terms of fingerling production. And although the market demand is there, especially for the new varieties that you have proposed, we know that there has been significant demand for tilapia. But experience have also shown that competing with tilapia with supplies out of China and out of Vietnam has been a challenge. But we do have a number of, as you described them, Amazonian species in the region that will give us the kind of productivity in terms of yields, because we have a large market in the tourism industry for fillets, and those type of those species give you a better return in terms of fillet. And so in terms of the viability of the industry, based on our own indigenous species, I think that's where the growth potential exists. Where we have not made the investment and where the opportunity exists is to begin to produce the fingerlings. That's, I would say, perhaps the largest initial area of investment. We do have quite a number of facilities in the region that are engaged in fish processing. So an investor can either come in and invest at the primary level and go along the whole chain, or they could invest in joint ventures with existing processors. I overlooked the fact when I introduced you that your farm operation is actually an integrated one, where you're actually not only producing the end product, but you're also producing your own feed. And you're also now looking at the production of cassava as an input. So the potential for the industry goes beyond just the traditional growing of a particular fish species, but also investing in early stage, in fingerling, in feed production, and indeed in various aspects of the value addition. There's a tremendous growth in the fish and chips market in the region, especially in the tourism industry. And I think we all would be aware, the global demand for fish is increasing everywhere. In most countries, they are actually overfishing their marine resources. And so the need for aquaculture production is tremendous. We also have those who have gone into production of plant-based marine products, another growth area. So when we come back to looking at the specific opportunities, we can perhaps delve a bit more into some of these areas. But I want to thank you again for an excellent coverage of the subject. We now want to move on to another exciting area of our food industry. On to meet, but as I explained earlier on, I'm not sure everyone would have been online at the time. We had an excellent speaker in Dr. Keith Emile, who is a regional specialist in the meat industry. But unfortunately, he's traveling and was unable to get his flight in time to get to destination where he can join us. If that does happen, then I'll have him on later on. If he's unable to join us, then again, I'll do some deputization. So I want to move on to the silver as a distinction of the youngest. Or it seems to have Simpson, you need to mute your video for the time being. I'll get back to you. I think we are online already. So Dr. Simpson has been involved in this industry, as he often tells me, all his life, because he grew up on herbs and spices. He was, in fact, the first early minister of agriculture in Guyana. He's a veterinary scientist, who's working in the health industry in terms of animal health in Guyana. But his passion has been in the area of herbs and spices. Back in Guyana, he's known as the medicine man, because with the advent of COVID, his own operation is a producer of dried herbs. And that business has seen tremendous growth as a result of the fact that I think the globe has now recognized the value of herbs as a medicinal input, and its potential to deal with not only a wide range of NCDs, but it's now being used as part of the arsenal against COVID-19. So I want to in investment opportunities in the industry. I know you could speak for hours on the matter of a medicinal aspect, but our herb and spice industry is well known, especially our spices globally.
Thank you very much, Vassal. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are in part of the world. I would like to deal with the issue of herbal medicine, but in particular, why we should invest in herbs and spices in the Caribbean. Vassal was right when he indicated that I believe in the fact that our healthy foods are our medicine, and we must make sure that medicine is our healthy food. In the Caribbean, we have been accustomed to using food, especially herbs and spices, in combining them with various other kinds of foods that we eat. But I would like to specifically point to the fact that the various categories that we have in the herbs and spice industry are food category, medicinal category, cosmetic and perfumery category, and landscaping and decorations. But there's another category that I would like to add, which is the category of carbon sequestration or carbon sinks and the whole business of carbon credit. But I can go now to the category of food, which in the Caribbean, we have been accustomed to using fresh and dried seasoning and spices. Oftentimes I tell people that we should change from the notion of fresh and dry seasoning. We should see them as simply fresh and dried healthy foods. But the fact that they were used or called seasoning is because a lot of the herbs and spices, because of their antimicrobial activities, they were used to season meats or season different types of food, particularly the meats, because of their anti-parasitic, anti-fungal, antibacterial, and antiviral qualities. So that area, we in the Caribbean are known for the various kinds of green seasoning, mixed seasonings, and so on. Then we have the question of our oils and oleoresin extracts. There are many oils that are derived from our superfoods, and I upgrade the herbs and spices now to the superfood category, where you have very awesome quality oils like the castor oil and the moringa oil and what you call ben oil and so on, that have serious or vast amounts of nutritional, medicinal qualities. And then we have the functional foods and drinks that become very popular, that is used in the Caribbean, and we are trying to expand that range. You find that herbs and spices find their way in many kinds of beverages. We have our famous Angostura bitters, we have lime, lemon, and bitters, and so on. And from our vantage point, and particularly mine, and I know that of Vassal in many cases, we should spike herbs and spices in almost all the various kinds of drinks to add value to those beverages. And we hope that very soon that will be done in almost all of our foods. In terms of the medicinal category, our basic herbal remedies and homeopathic medicine or homeopathic drugs, you find that from simple herbs like the lemongrass, oregano, broadleaf thyme, ginger, turmeric, and so on, and onions, garlic. Those are some of the basic foods that we have learned way back and even now about their immune system building capacities. And of recent, we have had the coronavirus, and the immune system is critical to prevent in some way or the other and even control and treat that virus. And most folks who have been using our foods as medicine or foods as preventative mechanisms to prevent infectious and non-communicable diseases, they have been working very well. And we are hoping that that could be enhanced in a big way by having it introduced at the level of the school system in an integrated and holistic way, so that from nursery to tertiary and other walks of life, people could be educated about the basic ingredients in our superfoods. Then you have some of our foods which we call nutraceuticals, and then you have the dietary supplements that abound. The herbs and spices are so numerous in nature. You have the Congo pong, you have the amaranth, and you have our regular Saijan, as I had indicated. You have purslane, you have seed at the bottom, which is called piedra basta, which is the best kidney stone medicine that is known, and many others, which are our phytomedicinal plants. And the Caribbean is teemed with these herbs and spices that are found everywhere. It's just that we need to educate our people about the use of these superfoods. We also recognize that we should get involved in various kinds of smart agricultural practices to boost the production of these superfoods by involving in not only just horizontal farming, but vertical farming, and emphasizing things like microgreens, which are very rich in nutritional and medicinal content. Then it comes to the area of cosmetic and perfumery, which our flowers that are in abundance in our yards, our backyards, our family farms, and our various landscapes. We need to make greater use of these natural ingredients for the cosmetic industry, hair care, and more importantly, or equally important, the area of aromatherapy, because especially now in the advent of respiratory system challenges, the inhalation of our natural plants or herbs and spices harbors well for us in general to prevent and control certain maladies. Then for landscaping and decorations, we need to understand clearly now that we can have what you call edible landscapes. And technically within an average 1 square yard, you can find about 21 different types of edible plants that not only good for human consumption, but also very good for our livestock. And we are saying that we should go promoting these kinds of edible plants in our parks, gardens, our community farms, our food forests, and so on. And in addition to that, in our container gardening or container farming, many of the plants that are used or found as floral arrangements, they're actually edible plants. One case in point is the arrowroot. A lot of people see arrowroot as a floral plant, a nice plant for decoration, but it's edible. It's one of the most digestible forms of carbohydrates that there is, and has a very low glycemic index of
Doc, I have
only.
to remind you of our time constraint, and we have a couple of other slides, so perhaps we could move on to the other areas.
Okay, thank you very much, Vassal. Our herbs and spices sales has grown 2.7% between 2016 and 2021. The global seasoning and spice market size valued at $13.7 billion in 2019, and that is growing as we speak. It's driven by, it actually has an annual growth rate of 6.3, and that is driven by the convenience food products that I was speaking about earlier, clean label trends and natural preservative from the meat industry, because there's this thing about the lack of, or the no use of pesticides and herbicides and all these various chemicals in the herbs and spice industry, where we promote the use of natural bio factors in preventing diseases. Food products innovation to incorporate natural ingredients, health and wellness product, ethnic authenticity that I dealt with a little earlier. Why invest in herbs and spices in the Caribbean or CARICOM? It's one of world's greatest center for unique biodiversity. We have Jamaica, Dominica, Guyana, just to name a few, that has biodiversity that is second to none in many parts of the world. We have also some Caribbean world leaders in terms of quality, flavor, aroma in our ginger, hot pepper, nutmeg, pimiento, cocoa, coffee, Angostura, bitters, as I had said earlier, all of which are strong growth sectors. The global sauce market attained a value of 4.3 billion in 2020 and is expected to grow at a forecast from 21 to 26 at 5.3% to reach 5.8 billion by 2026. All these are very good reasons why we should be invested in areas like the Caribbean in these herbs and spices. A number of universities with short capability and more so Scientific Research, Natural Product Research, and Biotechnology Center in UE in Jamaica, which are actively involved in herbal research and product development. So there is support mechanism in research and development, and we expect to make sure that we do a lot more of that. Jamaica has been granted a patent from the United States for discovering anti-cancer activity in the guinea hen plant, a plant which has tremendous medicinal value for not only the Caribbean, but the rest of the world. We have clear regional policy and strategy. We're still working on that in various ways. And governments are determined that the industry must be positioned as that can lead the fight against food and nutrition insecurity, and particularly against the NCDs, cancers, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, and so on, and also the eradication of rural and urban poverty, and the leading to or directly linked with the agenda of zero hunger, which is parallelly linked to the whole business of health and well-being. And if you can see clearly there, the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda, number 1, 2, and 3, which is eradicating poverty, eradicating hunger, and enhancing health and well-being. And the herbs and spice market, fortunately, traverses all the sustainable goals. And it is the reason why we feel that we have a great nexus here. There should be strong linkage in priority commodities, particularly roots and tubers, herbs and spices, with view of developing functional foods, especially work that has been happening in the bakery products, snacks, cereals, beverage, made from root crops. And I know that it is a niche area, and we are supposed to advance tremendously in those areas, incorporating herbs and spices in all the various foods. Private sector-led value chain, but with strong public-private partnership, particularly in R&D and international intellectual property, with regional cooperation pursuing export market. In Guyana, I know that there's a serious movement for the inclusion of community-led initiatives for herbs and spices, and linking a public-private partnership. And Guyana intends to leave no one behind, and starting with those who are farthest, the farthest or the most vulnerable individuals. We are starting in 2021, which is now, to involve all in the process of household herb and spices self-sufficiency, and they will be producing at larger amounts for export. There also, there's a program to restore the kitchen gardens and family farms. And currently, there's a movement by the government of Guyana to assist all those who are affected by the climate crisis to get economic recovery by the way of grants, and to use the opportunity for them to practice smart agriculture and to have agriculture be an integral part of solving the climate crisis via carbon sequestration, and hopefully they will get additional value, not only by the crops themselves, the cover crops, the no-till, the zero-till or low-till activities, but also be able to get carbon credits and be part of the carbon market.
Doc, could I ask you to wrap up, and while you're doing that, could you also speak to the new developments in Guyana as it relates to hemp industry?
Right. To touch on that, I'd like to point to the fact that the Jamaica Cannabis authorities do an excellent job, and we in Guyana have the cabinet the Guyana's cabinet of ministers gave the green light for the cultivation and processing of hemp. And the intention is to show that hemp can be successfully grown here in Guyana and other parts of the Caribbean, and hemp would be used as one of those vehicles that will help us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals that is set out by UN. And the community approach would be used for the cultivation of hemp. So one 10-acre farm in each region, and there are 10 regions in Guyana, would be licensed very, very soon to start those experimental plots. And soon after, there would be widespread cultivation of the industrial hemp and processing of that to satisfy the global marketplace.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to herbs and spices in the short time that was allowed. And I hope that the Caribbean Agribusiness Development Fund, which would be a mechanism for attracting investment in this sector, will be up and running soonest. Thank you very much, Basi.
Thank you very much, Simpson. I think that was an excellent point on which to end, because I think from the presentation, we can recognize the tremendous scope of herbs and spices in the region. The takeaway, I think, that I'd want everyone to have is the fact that this is a very versatile industry. If you look at the spice component, the fact that the Caribbean has long been a spice exporter, our ginger, our hot pepper in particular, or cocoa or coffee, have been known globally for the quality, the flavor, the organoleptic qualities. And in each case, we have export possibilities that are not being effectively exploited. Pimento has been the most critical ingredient in our jerk seasoning that has gone global. I know for a fact that this is an industry that requires expansion. In fact, the growth of the jerk seasoning industry is now being constrained by inadequate production. You look at the potential for turmeric. We import tremendous amount of turmeric in the Caribbean. We are big eaters of curry, and all our turmeric that goes into the processing industry is imported. So there are opportunities. The point that was raised in regards to the need for us to provide effective financing is one area that also creates opportunities for potential investors. The demand for herbs, the demand for spices is not in question. As Simpson pointed out, our universities, our scientific research institutions are now more focused than ever before on seeking to identify those plants, and many of these plants are indeed indigenous Caribbean plants. As pointed out earlier on, a large percentage of the plants that have been tested for medicinal value are based in this part of the world, many in the Caribbean. And we have identified, I think, 29 in the case of Jamaica, that have medicinal properties that can be exploited commercially. There's a need, of course, for more investment in the R&D component. But as he pointed out, we have one very recent case where from the Guinean weed cancer fighting components were identified, and a patent has been issued in that regard. So that's tremendous potential returns on investment in an industry like that. And we have several industries with that potential. I think many of you may be aware of developments in the cannabis industry. The quality of the cannabis in the Caribbean is second to none. And the new venture now in the hemp industry in Guyana, Guyana has huge, huge potential just from the basis of the landmass there, the continuous water supply. So from a production possibility, it's tremendous in Guyana. And if the investor were to look at those functional food components, all our herbs and spices that are now being tested and proven, these are not, in many cases, products with uncertain assessment in terms of their either medicinal or clinical value. Those that have already been approved, tremendous potential for growth, for investment in value added, for combination with our foods. I think the point as well that I would like you to take away is the potential to incorporate our herbs into a whole range of our foods. In fact, part of the regional development strategy for our staples is the need to combine them in as well with herbs, so that you'll have, for example, gluten-free herbal bakery products. This is a market that is now emerging. It's a great potential. And the Caribbean would have advantages, not only because of the quality of its products, but when you look at countries like Guyana, like Belize, and Suriname, where they're huge land mass. You'll have heard yesterday from a presentation from Israel about the fact that even though they were constrained in terms of quality of land and water supply, they were able, using technology, to develop one of the most resilient and impactful export platform for a range of products. We in the Caribbean, in fact, with the land mass we have, with the quality of the soil, with the water supply, sunshine 365 days of the year, in fact, has a greater potential. And therefore, the investment opportunities are there that need to be packaged. And we now have a mechanism through the Caribbean Agribusiness Development Company where these support services can be put in place. I know we're running a bit behind schedule. My other two speakers, as I suspected, are not able to join. But I give a very brief overview of what they would have spoken to. If we look at the area of fruits and vegetables, we import large volumes of fruits in the Caribbean. I think our import bill for fresh fruits and vegetables is close to $400 million US annually. And in most cases, the fruits and vegetables that we are importing can be grown, if not in all islands, in some islands. With the advent now of the greenhouse technology and control atmospheric production systems, and with the kind of technologies that we would have heard about yesterday, we are now well placed to produce a range of vegetables, particularly leafy vegetables that we now import, particularly for our hotel industry, which can now be produced in the region. We still, notwithstanding our capacity in the region, import fruits like melons, cantaloupe, honeydew melons, all of which can be grown either under controlled atmospheric conditions or in open field conditions. We also have, in terms of our indigenous fruits, those which can be developed for export. And I want to make particular reference to Pomsiter, or in some cases it's called June plum or golden apple. This is a crop that bears year-round, gestation period of 7 months. And the fruit itself, apart from its health benefits, can be used in a wide range of beverages and a wide range of fruit products. So there are tremendous opportunities in just that one industry. Indeed, in the Caribbean, we have a number of processors who import fruit juices, particularly apple juice, which goes in as a basic ingredient in many of our mixed beverages. And there's a potential to displace the imported apple juice with our Pomsiter juice. So that is one industry that cries out for investment. We have done the initial investment analysis, and the returns on investment in that particular industry is over 100% because it bears profusely, it bears year-round. The crop does not, at this point, suffer from any major pest or disease problem. So tremendous potential for developing a strong, both regional platform in terms of supplying regional market as well as for export. And on top of that, the leaves have significant medicinal value. So when you look at the potential in the region, not only in terms of displacing imports, but in terms of export potential, it's enormous. Where we need investment as well is in increasing investment in agro-processing. And regional government is now providing significant incentives for investment In the case of Trinidad, for example, the government has just built a agro park where they have established a number of processing facilities. These are being leased at relatively peppercorn rates. They are also providing support by removing income tax from income from agro-processing. So if you're involved in primary production, in agro-processing in terms of adding value, income from those ventures are free of tax. And I suspect you'll see that policy being adopted in other Caribbean countries. The fact that they've also put in infrastructure to make it easy for investors to have startup without having long wait to have approvals for building and infrastructure. So those are key and critical incentives to attract investors. And I know that they are planning to do that in other countries. Jamaica has in fact gone a long way in providing that. We have grown the hot pepper industry in Jamaica, largely because the government took similar action. So in our fruit and vegetable sector, the potential for displacing imports and for export is tremendous. Again, there's an opportunity to invest along the entire value chain. What we're seeing taking place in the region, in fact, is that a number of our importers of fruits and vegetables have now themselves gone into production. Only recently we saw in Jamaica, one of the major supermarket chain is now investing in acres of greenhouse to produce a range of herbs, fruits, and vegetables targeted at both domestic, regional, and export markets. So there's a drive, there's an interest, there's excitement in the industry. The government is providing the kind of incentive, the kind of support, including technical support through R&D. We have, as I mentioned, as I think Simpson mentioned, we have a number of universities and tertiary institutions with the capacity to support investors in terms of R&D work, new product development. And we are now working, as you can see, with KIPA. You will have support in every country from the investment promotion agencies themselves in removing red tape, in facilitating access to local support, ensuring that wherever government intervention is required, that it will be provided in an efficient and seamless way. So the investment climate in the region is ripe for that kind of investment. In the area of meat, we are relatively strong in the area of poultry. And for the larger countries, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago, Barbados, we have the capacity to produce up to 80% of our poultry requirement. However, in the smaller countries, in the OECS countries, they are still major importers. And every country in the OECS is now seeking investors to develop their own poultry industry. So there's tremendous opportunity in the OECS for poultry. We are major importers of beef. I was reading somewhere recently where the Bahamas imports over, I think, 150 million a year in beef because of the huge tourist industry that they have. Countries like Guyana, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Belize, and Suriname have huge land masses that will allow them to be competitive in the production of beef products, particularly Guyana. And I know the government has a range of incentives to attract investors in the beef industry. The area there as well that we can look at from a beef development industry perspective is the fact that we can begin to grow organic beef, because Guyana also has the landmass and a range of forage, high protein forage that can be utilized. And as was mentioned earlier on, with the potential for use of cassava, moringa can be grown quickly. It's a short-term crop. The protein content in that, combined with the high complex carb in cassava, provide tremendous possibilities for the emergence of a feed industry in the Caribbean. There are already, I think, over 20 mills in the Caribbean that can partner with potential investors in producing the raw material in terms of cassava and other forage, particularly moringa, which has proven itself as a feed ingredient globally. So there are those possibilities for joint ventures between new investors, either taking on the entire value chain or partnering with existing millers in the region. There are also tremendous opportunity in the area of small ruminants. We import a large volume of goat meat, millions. I think the figures in somewhere in the, close to 100 million annually in small ruminant meat, which is goat and sheep. We do not have the capacity at the moment to satisfy even 10% of the demand from local and regional production. And in every country, small ruminant has been identified as a priority area for development. And governments, particularly in the larger countries, are open to providing a wide range of incentive in addition to what is already there. So that between the production of sheep, particularly goat, because we are big consumers of goat meat, we see an emergent rabbit industry, which is perhaps one of the healthiest meat that you can consume. It's also an industry that can grow very quickly. There's also significant demand, increasing demand, especially in Trinidad and Guyana, and in some parts of the hotel industry for duck meat, another area for investment. Despite the fact that we have a fairly strong pig industry or pork industry, there's still tremendous opportunity for growth. When you look at what is done in the developed countries in terms of value addition from pork, we are nowhere near where we can be. I see the possibility for jerk pork produced in the Caribbean to become a global product, in the same way Danish ham is a global product. An innovative investor with the vision can take this globally. That will be again linked to the point made earlier on about our herbs and spices industry. So you could see a link there, producing pimento, hot peppers. In the case of Jamaica, their scallion and thyme are recognized as having high level of pungency. So if you were to look at building that industry from concept to consumption, tremendous opportunity there. The jerk is a well-known brand. Jamaica has now protected that brand in some ways, so that an investor investing there would have tremendous possibility for high return on their investment. So meat industry, tremendous possibility. Or fruit and vegetable industry, tremendous possibilities. So I want to stop there because I'm also seeing a wide range of points and questions in the chat, and I will now try to respond to some of those. And if you do have questions you want to raise, please put them in the chat as well. I see here a question that what would like to know about getting organic certification. What is the status of Jamaica and other countries' certification? There is no full recognition. In fact, it has been so for many years. We're now even showing the kind of public sector policy support that is required to create a strong organic industry. Because of the structure of our farming sector, many of our small farms are not in a position to be organic producers because they have over the years been using high levels of inorganic inputs. So one of the first things that is required is zoning of organic areas, particularly lands that are under government control that have not been subjected to production for many years, can be designated as organic production areas. And there's no that recognition. There's actually a regional organic policy that calls for that. And we see particularly in Jamaica and in Guyana, and I think in Dominica, that there are commitments to creating those zones that would allow for organic production. The certification is not a problem because we do have a number of international certification bodies that we can work with. And in fact, there's the Jamaica Organic Movement is already linked to organic certification bodies in Europe. So the major challenge in terms of development of the organic industry in the region has been this issue of a zoning of areas that will not allow for any form of inorganic production. And that is being done. So that is an area that I think if an investor has an interest, you will find ready support from governments throughout the region, but particularly so in the 3 countries I mentioned earlier. This is what other burning question. I see requests for the presentations to be shared, and I'm sure that that will be done. I know Suzette has put things in place to ensure that both the hard copies as well as soft copies, the soft copies will be available. And I think, I'm not sure about the video recording, but if that is also, I see a request relating to that, that will also be provided. I see a question about the resuscitation of the various commodity associations and the need to have that kind of institutional support to investors. I think in the case of what have been identified as priority commodities, the governments in the region have in fact identified the roots and tubers, herbs and spices, small ruminant, coconut industry, poultry industry, and selected vegetables for priority development. And in every case, those priority commodities have been provided with regional institutional structures to support them. And at the national level, there will be specific commodity associations. So an investor will have support at the regional level if they were to invest in more than one country. And at the national level, there will be public, private sector, institutional arrangements that will support the investor. Let me see what else is here. I see an offer here as well. It's not a question, but indicating that any business looking for international protection or financing to export in, please attend the seminar that they are proposing. I will ask our coordinator to perhaps send that out, because this is an area where financing can be obtained for potential investors. Right. If any of my other colleagues are seeing questions that I think we need to respond to now, I invite you to share those with us. Suzette, do you have any?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Vassal. No, I believe we've run out of time, Vassal, unfortunately. And so addressing other questions may not be possible at this time, but perhaps we could give a final word to the panelists, maybe one last opportunity to indicate to potential investors a burning area that they think for investment, that investment needs to be made in their particular sector. So maybe that's something that we could do quickly, running through your panel.
Thank you. So I'll just go very quickly through Brahmaran. Any last word you want to speak to?
Hi, Vassal and panel and everyone. From an investment perspective, critical points of investment would be in the technology, both at the farm level and in processing to drive roots and tubers in various ways, because the markets are there and we have both local and regional markets that can be tapped into with support in these two areas. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Kent? Hello?
Yeah,
just a quick word.
I would just like to highlight possibly the packaging and branding component, because most of our fish, local fish, is not branded at all. So I think there's an opportunity for that, and the whole AI opportunity where we could improve our production systems and be more savvy in that regard.
Great, thank you. Aubrey? Aubrey, are you with us? Yeah, then maybe I could move on to Simpson.
Yes, Russell, thank you. I think that we should use the opportunity to market the Caribbean as a great brand in terms of high quality or superior quality, clean air, soil, water, and a stable political and investment climate. And I think that we should put high on the agenda to attract investors to be part of the sustainable agenda for the 2030 development goals.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank all our panelists for the excellent presentations. The fact is that the Caribbean is indeed an attractive place for investment. The range of possibilities are enormous. Because of the level of development, the growth potential is also enormous. We have now a climate where governments have recognized the potential in this sector and are putting in place very concessionary terms, from removal of tax on imported inputs, including machinery and equipment, facilitating R&D, providing tax benefits for R&D, in some places providing grants for R&D, putting in place physical infrastructure at the farm level and the agro-processing level, strong export platforms through the various export support agencies, and the fact that KIPA has now taken on the agribusiness sector as an area of focus, particularly as it relates to high-tech investment. So you'll have a very supportive environment, both in terms of policy and actual hands-on support at the level of the individual firm. So we want to suggest to you as investors, as you look for where you put your investment dollar, that the Caribbean is not only ready and waiting, but will ensure that you have the kind of support to make sure that your investment is a successful one. Because of the advantage that we have in terms of the quality of our products and the brand Caribbean, as Simpson pointed out, you'll find yourself in an environment that will give you strong possibilities for success. So we look forward to hearing from you. I've seen some comments on the chat that people who have an interest in Canada and in the US, who we can follow up with. So I want to thank everyone, our attendees, our panelists, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Tomorrow we'll have a wrap-up session that will allow us to look at the way forward. And in every case, we'll seek to come back to you because we're going to see you as part of a team that's seeking to grow the investment in the Caribbean. The fact that you're here shows that you have an interest. So look forward to following up with you. And once again, thanks to everyone for participating today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vassal. Very insightful. I believe that we have all learned a lot about investing in these particular sectors in the Caribbean. I want to thank you, Vassal, for moderating that panel. It seems we didn't give you enough time. We needed to give you a little bit more time so that you would have been able to go a little deeper. But thank you for the work that you've done so far. And we understand that this is only the beginning, that we have only started the relationship, and we are hoping to continue working together to delve deeper and provide more information to investors. Just want to remind everyone who's here that this afternoon we begin again at 1 p.m. AST or EST. We will begin with a presentation on investment opportunities in Belize, and that will be done by the Executive Director of Beltrade or Invest in Belize, and that is Dr. Leroy Almandres. Then we'll have a session where Suriname will be presenting their investment opportunities, and that will be done by Minister Sudian. He's the Minister of Agriculture, but he's also an agronomist, and he is prepared to take all your questions on investing in Suriname. This will be immediately followed by a presentation on investment opportunities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that will be handled by Minister Saboto Caesar, as well as Mr. Hans John. Please don't miss opportunities this afternoon, colleagues. The same meeting link will be utilized, so you can keep your meeting going and join us again at 1 o'clock. And then a reminder that tomorrow we begin at 9:30 a.m. AST. And this is a conversation I think we all want to be a part of. It is looking at the future of AgTech in the Caribbean. And we have not only local representatives, that is representatives within the Caribbean, but we also have representatives outside of the region who'll be talking about the future of AgTech in the Caribbean. So don't miss that session. We're talking about people who have set up operations here in the region. We're looking at the enabling factors. We're looking at financing. We're looking at all those topics that we always talk about when we talk about the future of AgTech. So that's our session for tomorrow that starts at 9:30. All right, well, good afternoon, have a good lunch for those who are having lunch now. And we'll be back at 1 p.m. AST to speak about investment opportunities in Belize. Thank you. Bye-bye.